The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 11th chapter. Jesus taught his disciples like this: "Come unto me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." The Gospel of the Lord. Oh, hey. I'm out here splitting wood in my yard because it seems like an apt setting for Labor Day weekend, right? I'm reminded of one of my favorite poems by Robert Frost, Two Tramps at Mud Time, in which the poet writes, "The blows that a life of self-control spares to strike for the common good, that day giving a loose to my soul, I spent on the unimportant wood." I can relate to that. I can also relate to later in the poem when the poet reflects upon the goal in life to join the work that we do for love and the work that we do for living into one. He writes, "Yield who will to their separation. My object in living is to unite my avocation to my vocation, as my two eyes make one in sight." Well, it's a grand vision, and I hope it's true for you. I hope there is some area of your life where you are able to give yourself completely, where you find joy and fulfillment in the midst of your work. But let's be honest, for most of us, it isn't like that. And at the end of the day, what the poet imagines is simply not only rare, but also impossible. So the grand vision of a somewhat romantic poet aside, we know that what's true about our work is that eventually for all of us, it devolves into competing demands between earning a living, maintaining a household, and perhaps finding time for some cherished craft. And then a global pandemic arrives to complicate, weigh down, and infiltrate all of our work, making it that much harder. Maybe like you're experiencing COVID fatigue. Or maybe like me, you find yourself wondering if you're doing enough and often settling for good enough. Or perhaps your pain in work these days is for the lack of it. 13 million Americans are currently unemployed. And let's name a truth about that in this time of pandemic, once again, our sisters and brothers of color are sadly overrepresented in this category. You see, when it comes to our life of work, it's not long before we come face to face with the reality of our personal and collective sin. And what our Creator intended for us to be a blessing, we experience instead as a burden. Our experience confirms what we know to be true as followers of Jesus Christ, as Christians, that our work does not define us, and it cannot save us. Our work doesn't define us, God does. In the waters of our baptism into Christ, we were reborn into new life. Our old self that does not want to follow God was drowned in the waters of baptism, and a new self arose to live with God in righteousness and purity. And so we were reborn as children of the King, beloveds of the Almighty One, a royal priesthood. Forces will conspire to convince you otherwise. They'll try to tell you that you're only as good as the quality of your work. Or they'll try to convince you that you can be measured by how much you are able to consume. But don't you believe it? Not for a second. The journey that started in the waters of our baptism, that journey from death into life, we come to find out as followers of Jesus that this is the shape of our whole lives. We see it reflected in nature, but we also see it in our experience, that when we are feeling crushed, hemmed in on every side, right there is where Jesus comes and meets us. And so if we are experiencing hardship in our life of work right now, perhaps we should rejoice because we know as Christians that resurrection cannot be far behind. I notice too that we're experiencing the same hardship in our life as congregations. This time has brought a kind of death. Kind of death in which the ways that we often did things have come to a halt. And there's a loss in that. And we know that in some cases, those ways of doing things will not come back. Yeah, there's a loss in that, but there's also the possibility of new life. I notice how quickly we managed as churches, as congregations, to become focused on the main thing. We figured out very early on in this pandemic that whatever we did, we had to find a way to share the good news of Jesus Christ, to worship God, and to serve our vulnerable neighbors. I marvel at how quickly we as a church figured out the main thing. And let's face it, much of the way we spent our time and our resources in times past was often not about the main thing. It was often more about following a folkway than it was about following Jesus. We were often more focused on caring and resourcing a building than we were on caring for our neighbors. We often spent more time celebrating a cherished cultural heritage than proclaiming the treasured gospel. If our work as a congregation is running into pitfalls now, is hard now, we should rejoice because we know as Christians that new life, that resurrection can't be far behind. That's who God is. That's the way God works. Today, we hear a familiar invitation from Jesus in Matthew 11. It begins with those familiar words, "Come unto me." I would have you note what it does not say next. It doesn't say, Jesus doesn't say, "Come unto me, you great ones, you winners of the world, you ones whose work is always manageable and satisfying." No. Jesus says, "Come unto me, all you who are laboring and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." Right there is where we have always found our life as people of faith. Resting in Jesus, in His promises and His assurances to come to us in the midst of our hardest times. Right there is where we have always found our life. And now our work sheds its once desperate edge. We no longer need to be defined by it. We no longer need to be validated by it. Instead, we are freed. Freed to be wholly devoted to loving Jesus and loving our neighbor. A blessed Labor Day to you. Amen.